All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a discussion of The Immortal Investigation by Michael Cronk. And my guest is none other than Michael Cronk. Hello, Michael, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, so happy to be here. I have such high regard for you and your channel and the discussions you do, and I'm honored you read my book, and can't
Yeah.
wait to chat about it.
I'm very excited.
But
Now we are going to start non-spoiler and probably continue for quite a bit, actually, non-spoiler, because there's a lot to this book. I think it's a good sign when you can talk non-spoiler about a book for a while because I like to talk about themes. And you can do that without
mm,
spoiling the plot of the story. So I think we have some meat to get into here. But we will talk spoilers later on. But we will begin. If you haven't read The Immortal Investigation, you're fine. And we are going
mm.
to just talk around the spoilers, and I warn you when we get to the spoiler part of the discussion, so you'll have some warning, and I'll wave my hands or something too. So
Yeah, big flags, air horns, air
yeah,
raid sirens, you name it. Yeah,
all the above. Yep,
it
alert,
won't be
alert.
subtle.
Yep. So, well, first of all, congratulations, Michael.
Thank you.
It's terrifying and exhilarating and just nerve-wracking and such a joy to release a book. It's quite a swirl of emotions, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I've been writing more or less unpublished for a while,
Yes.
and I was surprised when you suddenly get confronted with like reviews, how many people are buying the book, all the numbers. Do people show up for it? Do they actually like it? It
Yeah.
can be confronting, but I will say I found that working as a YouTuber sort of prepared me for it because
Uh-huh.
you're interacting with people.
Yeah.
Sometimes people show up in big numbers for a video, which you're like, oh, I didn't think anyone would. And then you release something that's amazing and no one shows up for it. And you're like, oh,
Yep.
well, this makes no sense whatsoever. But but that's exactly how books work, I think, or any sort of content creation. There is that unpredictability of the masses or the wisdom of crowds.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I felt like I was a little bit prepared for it this time. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you that though you were writing long before I believe you were a booktuber, and as was I,
Mm.
and I thought of myself really primarily as an author. But, booktubing became a wonderful hobby and a wonderful way to connect with lots of people. I also think I learned a lot from it. Do you think you learned anything from being a booktuber and reviewing other books and things that helped you in the editing and so forth to make this a better story?
Oh, lots of things. Well, I think for one, when you're a booktuber, there is so much pressure to read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Because you got to read a lot to keep up with the content creation. It's a real
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
And I know personally, one of the biggest challenges of getting into BookTube was to keep a good attitude about reading and to not
Yeah.
let it turn into a dreaded, oh, I've got to make sure I read this X number of pages every week. I got to hit that, those goals sort of thing, but just keep it fun, you
Yeah.
know? And definitely. But I still think that BookTube has encouraged me to read more than I normally would have and read books that I would not normally have. Because if I just reviewed only the books I like, I don't know, you wouldn't quite appeal to everyone. Or I know one of my big goals on my channel is to try to get new people reading.
Yeah. I like that.
That's a big part of it. So I deliberately try to review children's books and YA books or
Hmm.
any sort of like lighter fantasy things because they're really good gateways to getting people reading.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot more YA in the last 2 or 3 years because of that.
Uh-huh.
You
Huh.
know? Yeah. And I
This is
don't think my
not.
book is YA.
Is it? Do you
No,
think
no,
it's YA? No, no, no. It's not
no,
YA.
no,
Yeah, no,
definitely.
no. That's what I was about to
Yeah.
say. This is not YA. This is very much adult, and it is urban fantasy, set in Plymouth in England, and it is. Um, when I talked about it on the weeks that were, I said that the easiest thing to compare it to is obviously the Dresden Files, and there's an investigatory aspect to this, as in the Dresden Files. But a huge difference is, of course, that your protagonist Jason is not magical. He's a mere mortal like us, and
Hmm.
one of the fun things for me in the book was definitely getting to know the magical part of this world through Jason. And because I didn't know, I basically knew what he knew. It's not
Yes.
first person either. That's another difference between this and Dresden Files, an important difference. Jason is, but he's the main POV, and he's
Mm.
the protagonist, let's say, and we're getting to know this whole world through his experiences, and that's fun. Discovering that there's more behind the curtain, here than you might have ever suspected. Now, I have to ask. I've made this comparison, but is Dresden Files an important influence, do you think, for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think Dresden occupies a huge space in the urban fantasy market. Like, it's unavoidable. It's like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. You know, you can't go into the genre without feeling their influence somewhere.
Yeah.
And because of that, sometimes you need to be a bit intentional about making them different. So again,
Mhm.
third person, Jason not having magic or any sort of, magical superhuman abilities was very much a way I wanted to distinguish it too. Because Dresden, he can be a heavy hitter,
Yes.
or
Oh, he's
like,
powerful.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, especially in the later books. I was going to say because you're up to book 7, aren't you?
Yeah, I've read book 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Just remind.
But I've
I don't
always
know. I've
noticed
done a
that
couple.
Dresden is an unreliable narrator, and he always
Yeah.
seems to underestimate himself. You get the sense that other
Yes.
characters are more afraid of him than he realizes. That he seems more of a power player than he seems to think. And there are other aspects of his own self-perception that I think are skewed, but that's to do with his own personal history and stuff. So, but yeah,
Very true. We're going to get sidetracked, but I still want to.
yeah,
Because you're absolutely right. Later on in the series, we do get point of views from other people, and sure enough, they have like either a moment of oh crap, it's Harry, and other
yeah,
times they're like, oh, Harry's here, we're saved, and Harry doesn't think that at all. That's what's kind of endearing about him. He just has no sense of that.
yeah,
But yeah, one of the with making my character have no magic.
yeah.
Part of that was to deliberately subvert the Dresden Files. A part of it was because of Brandon Sanderson's series, The Reckoners,
Aha. Okay.
which
I'm
is
not familiar with
one. I
that
think it's
series.
that's his. No, that's okay. It's a YA series, but that
Okay.
one, they're all these superpowered beings. So it's superheroes, but every single one of them are evil.
Oh,
And the Reckoners are a group of people who literally salvage, magical abilities and then
okay.
try to fight back against these super powerful beings.
Hmm.
And in a similar way to The Boys,
Uh-huh.
with like Carl Urban, that's his name, yeah, and Jack Quaid. But yeah, that's a great show where like the boys are the underdogs, and if they actually went, and had a proper clean fight with their heroes, they'd be wiped out in a second. So they have
Right.
to be sneakier, smarter, and it was a really good writing challenge to make sure, like, okay, if Jason's in this life and death situation, he's not going to be able to just walk up and punch his way out.
Yeah.
He has to be smarter. How can I write something that's smart enough to justify him escaping? How do you keep the logic, secure? Because you're like, oh, that's a plot hole. He surely would have died then. You can't do that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And there are definitely times where I think there was twice in the first book where I literally wrote myself into a corner. I'm like, nah, he's dead. I got to go back and write, change his whole path because there's no way he's getting out of there alive.
I mean, he came close anyway, but yeah, I mean, it
Exactly.
was
Very close.
pretty harrowing. But yeah, and he's not just well, he is a rookie police officer as well. And he has certain aspirations due to his own personal history in part,
Mm,
which we'll talk about more when we do the spoilers, but the
fair.
fact that he's a rookie cop as well, he's just learning that job too, really. I mean,
Mm,
he's got a lot to learn here, which is great because you can obviously take it's common enough in fantasy in general to have a protagonist who starts out pretty naive and green
mm.
and to take that character. And I'm sure you have a vision for this series, I bet you. And how many I know that you have 3 books completed at this point in
Mm.
the series. How many books do you envision there being? And I'm sure that you have an idea of how Jason is going to be changed in the course of these books.
Look, it's a big number, so don't be intimidated.
Okay,
Like,
okay.
I say that to like new readers watching. Like, look, it's a lot, but the big number is 12.
Okay. But I want to interrupt
And
you for a second.
Yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
is 12, but don't be intimidated. I agree because could be read as a standalone. Is that going to be
Yes.
the case for each story, as in the earlier Dresden books? Are you going to have kind of like let's have a finished story in essence here, and then we'll move on to the next
Yes.
story? Is that the goal?
I will say as much as possible.
Okay.
So one of the things, especially if you read on, each new book is like a new case they've got to work, or like a new mystery.
Okay.
And a lot of things will carry over between the books.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, every book has a very hard ending to sort of reward you for actually getting to the end of the book.
Yeah.
But and of course there are little like teasers of what's going to come next, sort of thing. But yeah,
Okay.
as much as possible, each book is going to be as standalone as I can. Yeah. But one
Cool.
of the other reasons too why I'm saying 12 is
Yeah.
because I've actually have too many ideas. Like I've
Uh-huh.
got a lot of ideas of what I want to do here. And I'm like, this could very easily be turned into either Dresden Files, which is like 17 plus books with maybe 25 in total. Or if you know the Skullduggery Pleasant series,
Uh-huh.
I think there's 18 standard novels and then a whole bunch of side quests sort of thing. And they just go on and on forever. And I would not want to do that to a story. I think you need a
Uh-huh.
goal. You know,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah.
absolutely need a goal to strive for, you know.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things you'll notice, if you can bear to continue on with the series,
Oh, I'm
is that
be delighted to. So yeah.
thank you. Is that I'm sort of structuring them into trilogies in a way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I won't say much about it, but basically there are some pretty significant things at the end of book three, and then it's like, okay, now we're going into a new, I don't know, let's say era. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
keeping it vague sort of thing.
So you
But
have
it's one of the ways.
arcs within the series, in other words. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Or oh no, yeah, arcs. I was just thinking how they do it in anime. They have the different arcs for each thing, but
Yeah, they have arcs and then they have bigger like sagas and at least in like One Piece or
mm,
something, right? Yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But
Cool.
no, 12 books because I've got a lot of ideas and I'm sort of grouping them into trilogies. So every idea that's related to that thing that goes in that
Yeah.
trilogy, this idea goes in that trilogy. And it is actually a little bizarre how much of this I have planned out.
Yeah.
So a fun little story is I've started writing book four. And just a few weeks ago, I was sitting down with my wife, sort of like with a whiteboard and a pen, and I was showing her all the major plot points that were coming in book four because I planned the crap out of it. And
Yeah.
she goes, "That's a lot of plot points for one book." I'm like, "It has to be because I've got plot plans for book five through to book 12. So I've got to wrap this up here so we get into the next one." And I know it might sound like it's a weird process, but the whole point of
Ah,
saying 12 is a hard limit to get to the point. I don't want to just like keep dragging the story out where people are like, can something happen? I'm like, no, no, no. Let's keep it moving. Let's
yeah.
move towards a goal, you know? It's sort of like if you ever work in an office or in a factory and they're like, you got to account for every minute, 5 minute bathroom break sort of thing. It's like sort of have that approach when it comes to a book where like things need to be moving,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's good to reward a reader too for getting through, let's say, three books, and let's say, okay, that's a trilogy, right? And then you could go somewhere else for a while, read a different series, and then come back and read the next trilogy within like kind of like Realm of the Elderlings,
Mm.
which is
Yeah, yeah, it's a
16
bit of that.
books,
Yeah.
but it has mostly trilogies and one tetralogy within it, right? So
Mm.
think of it that way, and I think it's a good sell in that sense because that is less intimidating. If you say to someone, "Well, to read the series, you got to get through 12 books," but you're able to say, "No, I'm going to reward you here. This is actually kind
Mm.
of standalone-ish, right? But then it is part of maybe an arc of three books. We could call that. Are you going to have it four arcs of three books, or is it going to vary in terms of the arc lengths?"
Oh, yeah, it will be three. It'll be three each time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Um, no, sorry, I can't say too much more about it, but yeah, there will be three every time.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So you don't have to answer any questions that lead to spoilery stuff, but yeah. But that's
Yeah.
cool. So anyway, did you want to elaborate on that at all or
No, I was just gonna say, like, I get really excited when I talk about my books and my
of
ideas. So
course.
I have to be extra careful to not just
Yeah.
blab it out. Like in the author world, I'm like the Tom Holland who just wants to go straight to all the spoilers. So that's not great.
Well, we're gonna get there. In fact, I think we could transition a little bit to, well, it's not a spoiler because it's on the back of the book, but there are
Hmm.
vampires and other,
Yes.
supernatural beings in here. So, or is that the right word?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Not,
Supernatural
yeah,
beings.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, technically, immortal is like what the in-world thing
Right.
is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So immortal, but not immortal in the sense of actually like living forever, but
Yeah.
definitely more long-lived than humans. And you have some really cool places where including the Bible, Methuselah and all of that. And there are some, of course, you draw from different places. And that's another common thing
Thank you.
in urban fantasy, I find in like Dresden is
Yes.
an example where the monster of the week, it could be werewolves, it could be vampires, it could be,
Yep.
there are even pixies and, fairies and all kinds of different things that he'll just grab from, right? With a sort of a modern urban fantasy type thing. Harry Potter's a lot like that too, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Harry Potter is kind of an urban fantasy in a way,
In many ways. Yeah.
yeah. And it has a similar, I think, kind of tendency to just grab whatever is needed, for that
Mm.
particular. If you need dragons, there are dragons, and is this going to be the kind of case here too with your series that as we go further and further, you're going to just grab from different places, or do you have a definite sort of limitation to the different supernatural creatures that we're going to encounter here?
Yeah, no, good question. There's definitely a limit, but it's a big limit, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, I've actually already planned out mo pretty much most of what creatures, or at least what categories the creatures will fit into.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
no, can't spoil that. But it won't be a case of just like continually adding to it, sort of thing. I always liked Sanderson's Law of Magic, where he says, go deeper with what you know before you add something new.
Uh-huh.
And I really like that principle because I'd rather, instead of having 20 different, or like 12 different, immortal species over 12 different books, I'd rather have a couple who we go really deep with.
Okay.
And that's definitely a big part of what the first three books is about going into vampires.
Well, one thing I'm
Because
very sure about is we're going to be seeing more vampires. Yeah, yeah. In future books.
because you'll notice these are not normal vampires. They're pretty different.
Right,
You
right.
know,
You have a
they don't
you have a
exactly.
different take on vampires in here. Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
exactly right. Yeah, yeah. And I can't, again, I can't say what it is. I just want to spoil everything, apparently. What's going on? But um, the whole point is that um, they are the underdog of this society,
Right.
that they in the past they used to be incredibly powerful, but people have put them in check. And now a lot of what we know about vampires in folklore and fairy tales and just pop culture, it's all very negative because that's how it's been twisted. And
Mm,
vampires are quite different to that. And I was always kind of inspired by the way that humans tend to demonize their enemies.
mm,
That our enemies they're not real people. They're actually animals. It's a very common prejudicial argument. And I wanted to apply that to vampires because vampires and a lot of stories, they're very bestial.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
monsters. They're not human beings. And I
Right.
wanted to make that a big part of it. And again, this is similar to the Dresden Files in subverting it because Dresden has a lot of there's the fairies, there's different deities and different monsters, but they're all like either they're very casual and informal or they're kind of alien. They're not
Uh-huh.
quite human. And something I wanted to do with all of the immortals here is make them human. Human but different, human but much, much older or from different generations,
Right.
but essentially human. Because I always find human conflict is more interesting and more nuanced.
Absolutely. And they're human in one sense as well. There are good ones and bad ones and ones that are kind of a mix of those. And they're also part of a history of which I guess most normal people like us are ignorant. We have our sort of our history that we know, but what we don't realize is that immortals have always been woven into this history, that they're part of the world around us and always have been and
Mm.
appear in various ways in history, which we wouldn't have understood without knowing that world, which is basically kept hidden from most people, most ordinary folks. But there are certain people who are in the know, who are not immortal themselves, I guess, right? I mean, there's a difference there, but we can talk about that in the spoilers a little more. But I love this idea that you brought up, and I think it's one of the themes that you handle really well, is the othering, you know, this idea of the
Mm.
monster, the other. And that is something that it feels like you intentionally wanted that to be part of the story here, that you have a character who has in Jason, the protagonist. We'll talk about it
Mm.
in more spoiler terms later, but he has experienced trauma, right?
Mm.
And
Yep.
he understands that there are certain people who not immortal ones, just ordinary people who can
Yeah.
be incredibly monstrous, right? That
Hmm.
can do terrible
Hmm.
things to other people. So that's a cool thing that you have in here is this idea that who are the real monsters, that kind of thing, the kind of thing you see in like the Witcher books or something like that, right? It's
That's a
a,
good comparison. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I like that a lot. Another theme in that I really appreciated you handling in here, and this is another difference between your books and Dresden as I see it. Y- Jason, and I said this during the weeks that were my little mini review or whatever.
Hmm.
Jason is, I don't know if you agree with this label or not, but the way I think of a feminist is that this is somebody who thinks all people should be treated equally and no group deserves to dominate another. And I feel like
Yeah.
Jason
Yeah.
is a feminist character. Now, I'm not I hope this doesn't sound too critical of Harry, but he's definitely not a feminist per se.
Yes.
He's we do get a bit of male gaze, with Harry's first
Mhm.
person narration. I don't want to be too hard on him for that, but it does turn off some readers. But Jason's very different. Now, was this a deliberate choice on your part to say, I'm going to make my protagonist here actually a feminist and explore his decision to be in the world this way because of his unique life, including the trauma he's been through,
Hmm.
which is really important. We'll have to talk about it in the spoilers, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
was this
Yeah.
how deliberate was this inclusion of this idea of because you go to it a lot in the story, this idea that there's a traditional view of say gender roles, and you talk about
Mm.
transgender people in here. You talk about lots of
That's
different
true.
things
Yes.
that are, yeah, yeah. So was that just sort of organic? How did that
Yeah.
be part of the story?
Look, a lot of it was organic. Like
Mm.
it was kind of like I couldn't shut up about it, so it was going to get in
Uh,
there one way or another.
uh-huh.
There's a certain element of that. But I think with Jason being a feminist, that definitely was deliberate. For one, um, oh, so many reasons. Part of it is just the fact that if I was going to spend a lot of time writing this guy, I needed to like him. And I
Uh-huh.
thought having him respect women was actually going to make him a lot more likable for me. That was a big part of it. But one of the big things that people talk about with feminism, just to do like feminism 101, is like, yes, it's the idea that men and women should be equal. They should have equal value, equal pay, all those sorts of, things, equal rights.
Yeah.
But the other side of it too is that feminism is about removing the gender roles that are placed on us from birth. That if
Mhm.
you're a man, you have to act a manly way. If you're a woman, you have to act a feminine way. And that's something that's always contrasted with me in my personality. I'm 6'2" and I'm
Wow.
quite broad. And
You're a
people
pretty
always,
big guy. Yeah, yeah,
I am, yeah. And people have always been like, oh, you should join the football team at school and, you should be into cars. I'm like, I'm into books, man.
yeah,
That's all
yeah.
I'm into. And I've never really quite fit that. I think I have, long hair for that reason as well, because I just kind of lean into it these days.
Uh-huh.
But I like the idea that, removing gender roles in a personal level is healthy for men, and it allows us to, express our feelings in healthy ways. It allows us to take care of our mental health. Men have a massive increase in suicide rates, and a large part of that is because we don't treat mental health, and men aren't allowed to appear weak. Which is
Yes.
it's not a
Yeah.
way to live. And I don't like that gender roles are just expected of people. But I thought that essential part wasn't always going to be part of the book, but I realized it needed to be.
Mm.
especially if Sylvana, being an immortal, would
Yep.
come from, a much older time when gender roles were more rigid and definitely more clearly defined. And I was
That's on
like,
the
they're going
back
to
of the
come up
book
against
too,
this.
Sylvana. Yep.
It is like, yeah, yeah. And I was just like, this is inevitable. It's going to come up. And the challenge was honestly talking about it without using, all the political buzzwords that we're used to today. Um, because this is again, it's another whole rabbit hole I won't get into, but
Yeah.
people often really they don't want politics in books. A lot of people don't, and that's fair enough. I think that's a totally reasonable and valid argument.
Actually,
But also,
honestly,
if
I
you're
feel like usually people object to politics in books when the politics are the ones they disagree with. When
that's
the
right.
politics are politics we agree with, we don't usually say, I don't like politics in
Yeah, that's
books.
fine. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, 'cause I
100%
think
true.
politics are
100%.
present in books a lot more than people might actually acknowledge. But yeah.
I agree. Yes, I agree. But at the same time, if you want to have two people sitting down having a realistic conversation, politics are going to come up.
Yep.
Especially things like gender politics. People talk about that sort of stuff
Yeah.
around dinner. It's a first date conversation sort of thing for a
Oh
lot
my
of
goodness.
people, and it's
Yeah.
like,
You better figure
yeah,
that out
so
early because, that could be a problem if you have a very different perspective when it comes to gender roles. Yeah.
that's entirely correct. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, oopsie, sorry, one second. I'm just gonna adjust the
No
going here. I think the
problem.
there we go, get a bit more light in here. Okay.
And that is part of the tension in your story. You've already alluded to it, and the fact that Sylvana comes from a much older, more traditional perspective, and Jason has his ideas about equality. And that's part of the tension in here as well, is you have these different perspectives being represented, and there's a
Mm,
negotiation of sorts that goes on. There's a actual transformation that happens as well as a result of it,
mm,
right? Because when you do sometimes meet other people with different perspectives, it can affect your view, and you can be like, "Oh, wait, I didn't see that before. Okay, huh. Now I'll have to think about my position a little bit here.
mm.
Yeah. So that's how we evolve. We meet other people with different perspectives, and sometimes it can help us rethink our own position. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. One other thing, if you don't mind me just bringing up a topic on my own.
Not at all. Go for it.
One of the things I did actually straight up want to copy Dresden in is the humor, because I love reading through the Dresden Files, and there are just jokes
It's funny.
everywhere.
It's
Because
really
yeah,
funny.
it is a funny series, and I honestly wish that more books just included humor in the story as standard.
Uh-huh.
And look, I've done my best to include humor in my books. I don't know if that's come through or not, but it was my best. So,
Well, I think that it would be tough to match the Dresden Files in terms of the humor. It is really
mm,
funny in places when it's not being gross and male gazy. I actually enjoy the humor a lot in Dresden Files,
mm.
but you definitely have a sense of humor that comes through in here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Well,
I
honestly, I put way too much effort into it because most of these characters are in the UK. So I try to do British humor, which
ah
is a little bit different to Australian humor, which I'm more used to. So
yeah yeah yeah.
I don't know if that came across. I'm sure any UK reader is going to be like, this guy's terrible at this. But
I doubt that.
I watched a lot of Cats Does Countdown as research for this.
Okay, okay. Have you spent time in the UK? Is there a particular reason why you wanted to have it set in Plymouth as opposed to somewhere in Australia?
Yes, yes, for a couple of reasons. One of them, honestly, a big one is stubbornness. Okay, look, in Australia, it's the publishing industry is a really fickle thing, but one of the big problems is our publishing houses rely on grants from the government in order to stay afloat. It's pretty
Uh-huh.
standard. The problem is the government's only going to fund publishing houses if they are publishing books set in Australia
Oh,
because they think it's like a tourism thing to have books in Australia.
okay.
And the crazy thing is, though, it really frustrates me, is because Australians don't care about Australia. We are
Oh,
not in any way nationalistic. It's just not our
uh-huh.
thing. We have a great disrespect for authority and tradition. I mean, we
Uh-huh.
were colonized by convicts. We
Yeah.
have it built into our cultural DNA to disrespect authority, which I like very much. I'm proud of that part.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is if Australians see a book that's set in Australia, we go, who cares?
Huh.
and no one wants to read it. And I'm just so frustrated that we are pushing for Australian located books that people aren't reading, and I'm like, why is the government getting involved in the arts anyway? It's a whole thing. So I was like, I am not going to set my book in Australia. Thank you very much. Just like as in protest. But there are two other reasons why Plymouth and why England. One of them is because we're looking in future books. I can say this. We're looking at some of the older immortals who are still around from the Middle Ages,
Yeah, because
and
they
we
can live.
meet
We can say
people.
how long they live, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
up to almost 1,000 years, right?
yeah, almost 1,000 years. Yeah, it's a funny little thing that no one's ever crossed the 1,000 year mark, but a lot of people get close.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So we meet people in book two who were uh, involved in England's slavery history and
Oh,
involved in the colonization of a whole bunch of places. The conquest and strip mining of India in particular.
oh,
We meet some
wow.
pretty evil people who are from that age.
That's really interesting to hear because I love the where you started to weave real world history into your
Mm.
sort of in-world history here, and in ways that would be a surprise to the regular folks who are unaware of the immortals. And it sounds like you're gonna do a
Mm.
lot more of that in book two. You're gonna
Yeah,
go,
definitely. Sorry, I'm
yeah,
gonna be
cool.
picky and ugh. I have this window right behind me, which is really good light, but the clouds are going past and back
Oh
today,
yeah,
and
yeah, and it keeps
it
changing
keeps
the
messing
light.
with my lighting.
It looks good right
Okay, that's a little
now.
bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
yeah.
Clouds, stay. Right.
Good luck with that. Like that
Thank you.
king who commanded the waves to stop, right? Yeah. Anyway,
I think you know your medieval history better than I do.
yeah,
Which
it's
one's
a
the
story.
king?
Yeah.
I'm thinking Moses, but
Oh well, he succeeded apparently though, right? In parting
yeah, yeah, yeah.
me, so But anyway,
Uh, but yes, so I want to set up again in the next books. We meet some bad people who were there for much longer in England's history because England has a longer history than Australia does. So it's a bit more interesting there.
well, there you go.
Um,
There's a big factor, I suppose. Is yeah, there's
but
just a long history.
there is a fun reason why I picked Plymouth. I
Okay.
think I may have told the story. I think I told the story once on Talking Stories channel once, but it's
Okay.
it's worth telling again. In the For years, I was working in administration, and
Okay.
writing books on the side, pitching them to publishers, piling up all the rejection letters, that sort of thing. Um, but in administration in Australia, we have a lot of people on working visas, especially from the UK, and I met a lot of UK people. But
Okay.
what's really fascinating is in the same way, I see it a lot in people from the UK and the US, where they seem surprised that everyone doesn't know about how many states they have and the individual cities in their small towns.
Oh.
Like I've met American tourists who are like, I'm from Dallas, and I'm like, is that Minnesota? And
Oh
like,
no.
oh, it's from Dallas. I'm like, why would I know that? I've never,
Right. Yeah,
the whole
ask
world
them.
doesn't know these sorts of
Do
things.
they
Yeah,
know where Melbourne is or Brisbane or
yeah,
okay.
exactly. I'm in Brisbane.
Yeah.
I don't even
Which
know where
state is
Brisbane is.
Brisbane in? Ask any American. You'll probably get a lot
Exactly.
like I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're curious, it's Queensland.
Right.
That's the state we're in. And yeah, we don't need to talk about Brisbane. But one of the
Oh,
reasons I picked Plymouth was because I was working with the guy. He was from Plymouth. And it was just so funny because we worked in a call center and
okay.
I would always hear just his half of the conversation while he's on the phone. And he'd be like, oh, yes, I do have an accent. I'm from Plymouth. And then there'd be a pause. And then he would say, what do you mean you don't know where Plymouth is?
Oh, how
And then
funny. Oh,
he would explain it. And I literally heard him do the huh about 100 times over the 12-month period we worked together. And I'm like,
huh?
dude, just accept it. People don't know where Plymouth is.
You're gonna
Why are you
say
surprised every
I'm from
time?
England. Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man. And so I was like, would it be really funny if I set the story in Plymouth and constantly make jokes about what a small and inconsequential town it is?
No, has his friend read the book?
No, no, I don't think I kept in contact. No,
Oh, okay.
but
It would be funny if
they were
he
definitely
heard from him one day and he's like, "Oh, I get it. Oh, very nice." Yeah.
There are definitely some a few shots fired at Plymouth. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope they like it.
That's so funny. Oh no. Okay. Well, and I do think that one thing is for sure, they do have a longer history and probably
Much longer. Yeah.
in terms of the various monsters that you're portraying in here. Not
Hmm.
monsters, but immortals, so that what we think of as
Mm.
monsters.
Yes.
But yeah, they have more of a, I guess, a tradition in a European setting as well. At least the ones I've seen so far. Maybe you'll do some more international immortals at some point. I mean, do you think
Definitely,
you
definitely.
might draw from other mythologies, say, or that kind of thing in the course of the series?
We're getting a little bit into spoiler territory, but
Okay, well,
there's
okay,
a
maybe we
lot
shouldn't
of
answer that. Yeah.
there's a lot of overlaps in particular. I mean, like
Yeah.
almost every culture has dragons, but they're
Yeah.
Eastern dragons, Western dragons, African dragons. They're all very different.
Just keep
You
saying
know,
dragon. I'm in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, not that there are dragons exactly, but like lots of the different mythological creatures
Yeah.
are you know, they're a crossover between cultures, and the way that they're done in different cultures are different. Most cultures will have magic men sort of thing, or magicians sort of thing,
Yeah.
or witches, or someone who do sneaky magic, and monsters. The shapeshifters, in
Yes.
particular, they can be anything. There's a certain, covering all my bases with them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Well, I think it's time for us to get into spoilers, Michael, if you are
Yes.
ready for that. So let's do that. And this is a warning. I'm waving my hands. We're doing spoilers for the Immortal Investigation. So if you've not yet read it, this probably is your cue to bail on us, unless you just don't mind spoilers. But otherwise, we'll see you the next time. And there will be a link in the description, not only to Michael's channel, but to somewhere where you can purchase this. The easiest place, Michael, best place to
Yeah,
purchase?
probably through my website, but it's on pretty much most online retailers at this point. Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. All right, so there'll be a link to the website as well then.
Oh, and if
And
I can pitch, we have finished the audiobook, which I think
book
Philip
two.
listened to an advanced, oh, sorry, book one, sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Philip got to listen
Yeah.
to a advanced copy of the audiobook. We're still uploading it. We just haven't quite picked exactly where it's going, but
Oh,
it's coming. So there, audiobooks will be there eventually for you audiobook listeners. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. That is in the
okay.
works.
Oh, so before you leave, I should say I listened to the audiobook. So I had what a kind of an early arc or whatever of the audiobook. Is that what
Yeah,
that was? Oh.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So let me then say that the narrator does a wonderful job. What is the narrator's name?
Angus Scott.
Angus Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think he's like a big name in the audio world, but he's extremely talented. We're
Yes.
very lucky to find him, because the book's set in the UK and I am, not set in the UK. I wanted to make sure that, for all the little accents and dialects that are common in the UK, that someone who actually lived there and had, spent a lifetime there would get the right accent for right every person. And he really did.
Yeah.
He really
Like for
did.
example,
Absolutely nailed it.
Jason doesn't say Sylvana, he says Sylvaner, right? I mean, he has a
A
slight
little bit. Yeah, yeah,
he has a
yeah.
slight different an accent there that's probably native to that wherever he's from.
He has a Plymouth accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So
And it's really good because a lot of the immortals, they're aristocratic. So a lot of their accents are more pompous British, what you might hear
yeah.
in, Bridgerton or all the
Queen's
classic
English
shows,
or King's English, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
or
yes,
old
exactly. Yeah.
BBC English or something, yeah, yeah, cool, yeah. So all right, so just little plug there for the audiobook, which is soon going to be available, I guess, for those of you.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Wow, I feel really cool now. I got to listen to it before everybody else. All right,
you're hip and with it, Philip. Nice job.
that's right. That's me. That's what I hear all the time. So anyway. Let's get into spoilers. This is for real now.
Okay.
Spoilers, so go
Okay, for
away.
real.
Yeah, for reals this time. So yeah, Jason, we've already brought up, and I think that you do a marvelous job of including his recollections of his childhood as integral part of his character and what he went through, having an abusive father who uh, did really horrible things to, and the loss of his mother,
Mm,
result of what she went through, and the guilt that he feels as a child who not only did nothing to stop it, but felt that on some level, and he's a kid, so it's just, he's as a boy, he would have learned from his father, this is what it means to be a man, right? To behave a certain way toward women.
mm,
Now, he later, of course, consciously rejects that model
yes.
and decides not to be that. But as a boy, he assumed that the fault was somehow with his mother, that
Mm,
and what his father was doing was somehow in some weird way maybe justified. And he feels terrible that he didn't do anything to help his mother. So this is
mm,
what really motivates a lot of his character, isn't it? That first of all, that
yes.
trauma of having an abusive father, but also having that guilt about his own mother and not having even, not that he could have done anything as a kid,
Mm,
probably, but still he feels a tremendous guilt for not having understood or sympathized more with his mother when she was around. So this was something obviously that you thought out, I think, this aspect of him, or did it evolve as you were telling the story?
no, definitely. Look, there was always going to be some sort of secret that Jason was holding, because integral part of the story was that Jason was going to meet all these immortal people, but not judge them immediately.
Uh-huh.
And he was going to have a better understanding of what makes a person a monster. Is it
Hmm.
how they are born, or is it the choices they make? That's much more important, you know? And that really, I mean, that first showed up for me in chapter 3 when Jason is staying in the house with the vampires,
Hmm.
and he briefly considers, should I, help to kill them or stop them? They are vampires. Surely they must be by their very nature evil. But he's
Right.
like, no, I can't condemn someone for that. And even though he's like, oh, mate, I'm not 100% sure if I made the right decision, that was very true to his character. And from that point onwards, I was like, there needs to be a reason why he's experienced real monsters.
Yeah.
He's got something there. Um, but one of the things I'm actually, if you don't mind, just me bragging, I'm proud of the fact that I managed to weave that into the story as many times as possible before we actually get to the revelation,
Yeah.
because I think that's about, I want to say about two-thirds of the way through the book,
Yeah,
but it
we
comes up
don't
a few
really know
times.
the full extent of it. Comes out in little bits, we understood, I think, early on that it was his father who was abusive and he didn't want to be like that man. And then later, I think we learn about his guilt for not having really intervened. And then we learn about
Mm,
the mother's taking her own life at a certain point,
mm,
and the blame and everything else that emerged from that trauma. But yeah, you're right. It really does affect his character decisions in a comprehensive
mm, mm.
and very convincing way. That, yeah, in that moment, he would have held back from the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, they're monsters, I better get rid of them, like many of the other people,
Mm.
the townspeople who are, as it turns out, being manipulated in some way. But their aggression, it has to exist on some level, I think, before they can even be manipulated. Right? I mean, even with what are the mind reading,
Telepath?
the telepaths.
Telepath, yeah.
I don't feel like the telepath could have just entirely made them hate that hatred for these others, these monsters, if you will, has to exist. And the telepath, what the telepath does on some level is she kind of puts some fuel on the fire there. But there has to be a spark already, don't you? Is that what how that
That's
works?
entirely right. Yeah, yeah. I've always hated the trope of, magic made me do it.
Right.
Or it very much is like, oh, the devil made me do it. I'm like, no, no, no. I think people need to take responsibility for their own actions. And
Yeah.
so I was aware that there was that element there with the telepath influencing them. And that's one of the reasons why the telepath um, reads minds but doesn't control minds,
Right. And
you
can
know, or at the
nudge
very
you a
least,
certain way. Yeah.
exactly, or make you see things, you know, but like they can't control you. And I thought that was a very important distinction that
Uh-huh.
everyone who was acting under specifically her influence, they were still making choices.
Yeah.
You know, they had
Yeah.
been manipulated, but they were ultimately still responsible. And I think that's a very important distinction, at least in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Even among them, though, there are some who are, it seems, more aggressive than others. And then you even have the one that Jason meets, the one fellow who becomes his sidekick, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
loved that character. Yeah, the sidekick guy who wanted. Are we gonna? You don't have to answer this, but I'm hoping that he'll come back. That sidekick guy will come back. But
Oh, Phil, that makes me so happy. Okay, look. So
Freddie, yeah,
uh,
give him his proper
Freddie
name.
was not, yes, Freddie was not planned to be in the book.
Oh,
Freddie
really?
just showed up. Yes, he just showed up because Jason was in a bad way. He needed help, and I just thought to me, I was like, you know what? Even in a group of like lunatic, borderline cultists, you know, um, sorry, I want to make political comparisons, but let's not go there. Even on the more extreme fringes, you know, you will find good people who have just made dumb decisions
Yeah, yeah.
every time, every time. And I was just like, you know what? If Jason is in a life and death situation, someone would come forward. And that's where
Hmm.
Freddie showed up. I was just like, you know, he's right. And so I made sure to go back and put, you know, little couple of glimpses where he shows up before then. But Freddie is that he exists because of my belief in the redeemability of humanity.
I
That there
love
will
that.
always be one person who will stand up and be like, you know what, this is wrong, and I've made a mistake, you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, Freddie has gone on to become, um, like, I don't want to overstate it, but he's become a core part of this story to the point where
Oh,
I'm
good. I
playing
love it. Okay.
huge swaths of the later books around him, because he's fundamental. He's absolutely
I
fundamental,
love
and
it. And I gotta
it's
tell
one
you
of my
too.
favorite characters.
I gotta tell you too, Michael, I feel like your humor is the best with Freddie. Out of all the places well, no, there's one other character that I love in terms of the humor, but Freddie is one of the top two in terms of the use of humor. And the other one, I won't keep you in suspense. The other one is Nicholas. I love Nicholas as well.
Oh, Nicholas. Okay, okay, yeah. Because
Um,
I think there's a couple of characters who are like who are, you know, definitely on the funny end, but in different ways. This
yeah.
is like this is me putting way too much thought into it, but I try to give each character their own sense of humor
Uh-huh.
because
Yeah.
I don't want everyone to have my sense of humor because you know no one's going to enjoy that. Well, I would, but you know, this wouldn't translate well. Um, But like I know, like Detective Lynch, for example, is
Uh-huh.
another like you know comedy heavy character, but
Uh-huh.
he's crass and rude and kind of blunt
Yeah,
and
he's kind of hard.
inappropriate.
Yeah, he's harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but in many ways he has dark humor, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know Nicholas in on the flip side of that, he just has such innocent humor, and that's
Well,
what
I
just makes him
mean,
so lovable, you know.
huge highlight is when he just keeps quoting Dirty Harry. And Jason is trying to tell him, okay, stop quoting Dirty, and he just keeps coming up with other lines from the film. Love that. That's a favorite moment. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's brilliant to have Nicholas with this very aristocratic accent trying to sound like Clint Eastwood. So, yeah, this like 19th century, very aristocratic accent quoting Dirty Harry. That worked really. The narrator did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I feel as though the two older knights in particular, the
Yeah.
narrator just nailed. I was like, they're some of the best.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then of
Yeah.
course Philip, you made the snobby one, Philip, but
Yeah, look, I hadn't met you at this point, right?
I so but at least you gave him two L's. I only have one L, so obviously
That's
he's
exactly right.
the
Yes.
snobby one, and I'm the nice one. So yeah. But yeah, but he has a heart somewhere in there. That's another great
Yes.
moment too. By the way, and we're doing full spoilers here, so is when he
Hmm.
finally does win over. Uh, is it Emberline? Is the is it?
Hmm.
Did I get her name right? Yeah,
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Emily.
The meaner of the two aunts.
Yeah, the meaner one, and Philip is her husband, and they're the ones that
Hmm.
are tougher to win over. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's those tough characters when you finally do get that little, they kind of maybe crack a smile that you realize that okay, we've got something significant here, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's exactly right. Those were my favorite. I think in many ways, Emberline, she was great. Um,
It reminds
fun
me of
fact,
my high
actually.
school English teacher who was a
Oh, yeah?
legend and who was very
Mm,
feared by everyone, but had a wonderful sense of humor beneath that, and
mm,
once in a while I just saw that sign of a little smile there, and but she was
yes.
formidable, absolutely formidable.
Yes.
You wouldn't mess with Ida Mae Anderson ever, right? And she was an
Hmm. Hmm.
institution. She actually taught my mother at the same high school, so
Oh, wow.
it'd been around that long. Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And fun fact about Emberline is she was actually she's a villain from a previous book I wrote.
No
Yeah,
way.
one of my unpublished books. Yeah, but she was straight up a villain, and I was like, you know what? Let's just take a villain, copy, paste, stick her in this book,
Ah,
but we're
ah.
trying to win her over.
Oh,
You
that's so
know?
fun.
Uh,
Huh.
yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I think she just like oozes menacing, and doom and dread. You know, I think
Yeah.
that definitely comes off because in any other story, she might straight up be the villain.
Huh. Huh.
And yeah, I'm very proud of how she turns out, and especially the fact that like her relationship with Jason is antagonistic, but also not hateful.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's almost they're more like frenemies in many ways. You know, and
Uh-huh.
I definitely, yeah,
I
I
can
like
see
that
that
dynamic.
developing in a wonderful way. Yeah. And of course, in the case of Nicholas and what's the other aunt, the nice one?
Oh, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Yeah,
Yes.
she was immediately lovable, of
Oh,
course.
good. Okay. Okay. Good. Look, she was the character who was always struggling for more screen time in book
Uh-huh.
one. She gets more screen time later, but I'm glad like you at least got the personality come through because yeah, it was every redraft was like trying to give her more scenes.
She's the one who,
Um,
the nice old aunt who greets you with cookies and, and it's just, gives you a nice warm hug and um,
to an extent, I mean, she'll give you cookies, but then also criticize what you're wearing.
probably,
And just think she's helping, you know? I'm like, I
yeah.
wanted to give her that cynical edge of that like the disapproving mother type thing,
Yep,
you know?
yep, for sure, for sure. And then Nicholas, who I just loved,
Fair.
he's a hoot. Nicholas is a lot of fun. And of course, Sylvana is at odds with this family in the sense that she has been taught all these traditional values that that's what they've known all these years, and she has abided by these values, and in fact was miserable in her what turns out to be actually a second marriage. We don't realize that until much later in the book, but it's actually not.
Mm,
Arthur was not her first spouse, and
yes.
she lost her first spouse. That seems to have been a really wonderful relationship, but it ended
Mm,
with his death, and she was forced right away to marry this guy who was kind of a douchebag, actually.
mm,
So, and all in the name of keeping these traditional values, which are in some sense important because you've already alluded to the
mm,
fact that vampires are in this world not just straight up baddies. In fact, they can be nice, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're controlled, right? That there's an
yes.
institution within the, let's say, immortal world that
Mm.
controls vampires and other types of immortals. The what is the governing
Oh,
body?
the Imperium?
Imperium,
The
which consists
Imperium.
of the
Yes.
of the wizards who are the most powerful entities
Yes.
among the immortals,
Hmm.
among the various types of immortals. So the vampires are controlled because they're dangerous if they're not controlled, and that's part of. You can see where that would actually be some because traditions are rarely just straight up bad, right? They
Yes.
come from
Yes.
somewhere originally. There's usually a rational something behind it. It's just that when we hold on to them without thought beyond their usefulness, that they
Mm.
become harmful. And this is, I think, is the case in terms of the certainly gender values that poor Sylvana has been trying to uphold until she meets Jason, who and I love this part of it. It's a very slow dance in a way where he's trying to understand her whole world and he's and everything else, but in the midst of all that, he's also saying, "Wait, no, if you want to marry me? We barely know each other."
Yeah.
And you'll be obedient to me? I don't want that. That's gross.
Hmm.
I think marriage is about two people coming together as equals, So,
Hmm.
and you see Sylvana emerging from this cocoon in a sense. Like we get to see
Yeah.
witness the emergence of this personality, which is wonderful, right?
Yeah, I won't lie. Like out of all the characters in book one, Sylvana was the toughest one to get right, and I'm very grateful. I think in the acknowledgement sections of that book, I think I had like five people who read it, and all of them had advice on Sylvana, and I had to go through a few different drafts to get it right. And to totally honest, actually, here's a fun story. One of the reasons why I did end up publishing three books at once is because I was struggling to get Sylvana right in book one, and so I
Wow.
had to start writing book two. And
Huh.
book two has significantly more chapters from her point of view, where it actually
Oh, cool.
becomes both of them, a little bit more 50-50, still definitely more Jason, maybe 60-40 at this stage.
Hey, I love to hear
Um,
it. I love to hear it.
yeah, yeah. But honestly, she was tricky. And part of the whole thing was because I wanted to I wanted to show it in different ways, and I ended up picking the way that worked, which I'm happy with. But the whole idea is that um, she has multiple sides to her. She has herself when she's obeying her family, when she's
Yeah.
being traditional, and she's just doing what everyone expects her to do. And she wears that mask really well. In fact, she's more comfortable with the mask because she feels safer. But then you have who is she really when she's actually comfortable and safe enough and not being judged enough to actually be herself. And I'm
Right.
not even sure she knows at this point.
Right. Right.
And trying to get those layers to her in a 360-page book was a bit tricky because there wasn't a lot of space to work with. I do feel as though it came across, and it's one of the things I'm proud of stuff. But that was
Yeah.
definitely the biggest challenge of writing the book, just getting her sides, in balance.
It's a central part of the book, really, is her
Yeah.
evolution and her emergence as a self with agency,
Mm.
and self-determination and all of that. And her decision at the end was a wonderful touch where we see Jason
Good.
like, and you caught me by surprise. I did not expect it. It was like Jason finally is like, okay, yes, I'll do the proposal here. See, I mean it. I got a ring and everything. And
Mm.
this is like, and he's doing the gallant bowing or kneeling thing, and the whole family's all like, yay, and everybody's like, yay, and I'm yay, and then Savant's like, no, no, actually, I don't really want to do this right now. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what? No, 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 you're supposed to say yes. But no, I love that you had her say no there. I love that because then you get
Thank
the
you. Good.
full development of this character in that moment. And I was like, yeah, yeah, good job, Michael. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and it was meant to like reflect Jason compromises and comes over to a traditional side, despite all the barriers in the way, despite all of his discomfort around the issue. And then she does the same and meets him halfway. And I was like, this is honestly, it's just what a good relationship looks like. It's where people are listening and learning and respecting the other side, rather than being like, no, it has to be done my way, but actually compromising
Hmm.
and in a respectful way. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. So thank you. I'm glad you appreciated that. That was a good one.
I loved that touch. I thought that was okay.
Good.
That's good writing right there. That was a good moment. Really good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a cool dynamic we have between the two of them, and I can't wait to see how it evolves. If you're telling me that she's prominent in book two, I'm like, yes, good, very good. Um,
Yeah, well, she's someone who hasn't had much agency up to this point.
right.
And we definitely want to see how she uses that agency, although agency takes a bit of practice. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
we'll see how that goes.
Well, I would say watch out because when she's aware of her full strength, as Jason finds out when they're
Mm.
working out, she's no featherweight there.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Uh, It was also kind of cool how, and it's not entirely clear because even the Vigiles who come to
Mm.
at the end, they're scary. But
Thank you.
is it clear that they understand how Sylvana became a super vampire, right? I feel like
Oh,
it's an ambiguous thing here because that stumped everybody there. It's like, wait, how did she do that? Because she should have just become
mm.
kind of like her own strong self, but she in for a
Yes.
moment there became supercharged. And that's one of the things that brought the Vigiles there in the first place, right? Was that whoops, there we got a vampire who's gone out of control.
Hmm.
So
Yes, you gotta love how the vigils and the the vigiles, sorry. I mispronounce it too. My audiobook narrator does it correctly, but yeah, the
there's an E
vigiles.
on the end, so
Um that's
Vigile,
exactly
right?
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because it's Latin. The vigiles used to guard ancient Rome. They were like the police force or like the city watch.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And that's it's a literal copy paste from that historical word.
Well, I'm sure
Um,
vigil is related etymologically. It just means
that's exactly
watcher,
right.
watcher, right? Yeah. So someone
Yes,
who
that's
watches.
exactly right. Yes. Um, what was it? Oh yeah, yeah. But you got to love how the magical enforcers show up after the battle.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for showing up, guys. Yeah, but no, I love the idea that it's almost as if they were willing to just let whatever calamity befell, and then they would swoop in if it actually affected them and their power structure. There's definitely a
Right.
bit of that.
There's definitely some
Um,
real corrupt kind of privilege in the Imperium and this immortal world. Like it feels like a very what's the right word here? Like there's a vested interest here and
yes.
not a lot of compassion for the rest of the world. Maybe there are some really good wizards in the Imperium too. We haven't met a lot of them yet.
Mm.
Um,
Yes,
I
yes.
wonder if what kind of power struggles go on there. So
Yeah. Well, I won't say too much about it, but like it is sort of it's what you would know this actually as a medievalist, but the idea is that these are mostly kings, and they believe in the divine right of kings, and
yeah,
that my power is completely synonymous and intrinsically connected to the will of God itself. You
yeah.
cannot disobey me without defying the laws of the universe itself, and it's absolutely no separation there.
And this is
So
relevant well to our mystery villain. Let's just put it that way. Not going to identify.
yeah, no, sorry. Look, I did
Yeah.
I told sorry for people watching. I told Philip we shouldn't talk about him and name him, but I'm like, no, we can name him. It's okay. We're doing a
Oh, we
spoiler
can.
chat.
Okay.
I'm gonna relax on this. Yeah, sorry. It's
Oh,
just look, the whole book was written around that reveal.
yeah.
The
That's
whole
like
thing.
pivotal moment in the thing. Yeah. But we are doing spoilers, and I assume you've read the book, so you know who the mystery villain is. Uh, I have to admit, I did not entirely predict it, and I didn't get it until shortly before Jason figured it out. Like I was like, wait a minute.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it didn't entirely catch me by surprise, but I didn't
Mm.
really think about it until shortly before, and then realized, oh, Peter. Okay,
Yeah,
you
sneaky
are a
Peter.
really slimy guy, aren't you? Yeah, and you're talking about that privilege. But he's also somebody who's ambitious because he's not one of the central characters in the Imperium.
That's
He's a
right.
little bit
That's
of an
right.
outsider. He's experienced, he had to grow up pretending to be immortal because his family wasn't powerful. So he's somebody with a certain amount of power, but also feels a kind of a need to compensate because he's not at the center of it all and seems to be willing to do horrible things in order to do that. And also is a sexist creep. So just have to be.
Yes, isn't he creepy? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. He's
But
gross.
that's one of the things. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to show how before he is revealed that he has just a couple of off elements to him. Just he just has the occasional moment where he's not being, on his best behavior or he's been just a little bit
Right.
selfish. There's one moment I was quite proud of when Jason calls him early in the morning and Peter just snaps at him in response. And then as soon as he realizes he's Jason, he's like, "Oh, sorry about that. I was just a bit sleepy. What's up, mate?" And just
Uh-huh.
kind of goes back into his other ego sort of thing. But that's entirely what he's like. I did want to show that like it's not a total transformation once he comes out, that there were signs of what his real nature was like all
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
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 But
Creep.
one of the things too, you'll I was gonna say, Phil, have you read The Wheel of Time?
Yes, I have read that series. Yeah.
I thought you have. Yeah, yeah, I had to remind myself. But you know how with that series we have the Forsaken, who are the big arch villains.
Yeah.
One of the big mysteries of that series is where are the Forsaken and what are they doing?
Right. Right.
Because they're not just hanging out at the enemy base waiting for the heroes to come to them. They're active. They're out in the world. They've got plans and they're doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to make villains who are like that, where they are not passive villains, they're active villains. And Peter is doing stuff the whole time,
Yeah. Yeah.
as much as I could. In fact, every
He's
I
got
think
these wheels, these cogs and everything. He's got everything in motion. He's manipulating the townspeople who are after the vampires.
mm, mm,
He's got these three immortals, the one vampire, one shape changer, and one telepath working for him. And
hmm
they're
He goes
similar in
minions.
terms of one, they're relatively young immortals who want to get the power. They want more of the power, right? They want to be at the heart of it. So yeah, and they're just not nice people too. So
No, 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 very much so. Yes, yeah. Um, but no, I'm very happy with how that all worked out because I think yeah, Peter isn't just sitting around waiting. He is, yeah, he's doing stuff in the background. I think that
yeah,
makes it more interesting. Yeah.
very convincing
Uh,
villain. Very convincing.
Thank you,
We
thank
won't be
you.
seeing
Yes.
him again though because he had a sword go through his head. So I don't think a wizard can
Oh
survive that in your world, right?
no, 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 no. That is one of my rules. Dead means dead. You got to stick with that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sylvana came awfully
Most of
close
the time.
there. Sylvana came awfully close. Yeah. That was a
Yes.
yeah, edge of your seat kind of thing. Yeah. So
Thank you.
who else did we miss any big characters here? I feel like we talked about the major players. So we covered
In
Jason.
many ways, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking one of the big plot lines is everything to do with Jason in the police station and
Yes,
the
of
police work with the
course.
detectives,
I did want
because
to
that
bring
is
up
definitely
his mentor there,
mm,
whose name I didn't really because I was listening to the audiobook the whole time. Cater is
yes, Kada.
yeah, Captain Cater. I like that character a lot. I really
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
character because she does have as a a person who is an immigrant. She has a kind of an outsider perspective in a sense. And
Mm,
yet she has clearly worked her way up through her own capability and competence and hard work as a captain in the police force. And she does that job very well. But you initially feel like
mm.
there's a bit of a frosty relationship there between her and Jason because he comes along and says, "I'm going to be, what is it? Investigator? That's not the right word, but
Yeah,
I'm
detective. Yeah, yeah,
detective. Yeah, I'm going to be a detective." And it's just, "Oh yeah, rookie, yeah, okay." And
yeah, yeah.
but she has clearly her own trauma as well because when she is manipulated by the telepath there's some dark stuff that
Hmm.
comes out there. There's some dark stuff. We don't know exactly what it is because that's not revealed, but there's some dark stuff. So I love her character in that she seems outwardly very tough, but she also is clearly a very empathetic person, and she seems to see into Jason's pain. She knows a lot of his story and believes in him. So she's just a wonderful character that I
Thank you.
hope
Thank
to
you.
see more of her as well in future books. But
You do, yeah. No, I think she gets a good amount of spotlight in the second book in particular. I'm really happy with that.
yeah.
Yes, but in many ways, she's exactly the mentor that Jason needs because
Mm.
Jason does not respect coddling. You know, if someone comes up to him with kindness and compassion, he's just suspicious. He's like a cat rearing up. He doesn't want
Uh-huh.
that. But
Uh-huh.
she talks tough to him. You know, she doesn't soften her approach too much. Even when she's being empathetic and as gentle as she can be, she's still quite blunt.
Right.
And it's exactly what Jason needs because he doesn't respect anything else in many ways when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was also really important to me. I think people often a common thing that people want is they want strong women in books.
Uh-huh.
And I think often people fall into the mistake of, oh, if you want a strong woman, just make her a fighter. Give her a
Uh-huh.
lightsaber. And I'm like, no, sometimes strong women can mean mothers, or it can mean just women in positions of authority.
Right.
Because Kata is not exactly a warrior, but she's a leader. I
Hmm.
think that's a different type of strength. I think we need more general layers, to be totally honest, like leadership roles. I
I
think
think
that's
it's her
such an easy,
perceptiveness that is her strongest
yeah,
characteristic. Her understanding
yes,
of human psychology. Yeah, that's where that leadership comes from, I think. Yeah.
yeah. There's something too, this is subtle, so it's okay if no one noticed it, but Kata changes her approach just a little bit depending on who she's talking to.
Uh-huh.
Because at one point in the story, she talks to everyone, or almost everyone in the police station, but she talks differently.
Hmm.
Like she's really friendly with one of the other women officers. She's very aggressive with with Detective Lynch,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and she adjusts her style while still being herself. And I think that is the mark of a good leadership of meeting people where they're at.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Nice little group there. You've got Jason's kind of friend there, who does rat him out at a certain point. Um,
Yeah, he needed to rat him out. Jason
He
needed to be
had
called
to,
out on
pretty
that.
much,
Yes.
I guess. And you got the annoying guy that nobody wants to be partnered with because he won't stop talking about his kids.
Yeah.
Wilson, that's Wilson, I think, right?
Yes, Wilson. Yes, he's a one note comedy character.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind me sharing, I had someone literally email me just to be like, Wilson was my favorite character in the book. I'm like, what? But he was a joke character. What about all
Yeah.
those characters I put lots of effort into? But he's like, no, I love seeing um, a guy who's just obsessed with his wife and kids. Like
Huh.
it's really wholesome. I'm like, oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's cute. It's cute. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't know if I
yeah.
want to be in a squad car with him all day long.
No, no.
So, no, you got a great cast there, Michael. You've done a really great job with this book, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you
Thank
take
you.
these characters in the future and what themes you'll explore. Because I'm sure there'll be nuances as you continue in the series, and different things you're going to want to look at in this 12 book series, and
Mm.
with its four arcs of four trilogies within the 12 book series. So. Yeah, I'm really excited. Any final things you want to say before we say goodbye to our viewers?
No, no, I think one of my biggest goals in writing this book is that I wanted to write something that was really accessible, something that was really easy to pick up
Yep,
and go
it is
through,
that. It is.
And
Yeah.
I have had people reach out to me say that they accidentally read it in like one or two sessions,
Uh-huh.
and they read it in a frenzy. I'm like, good, I would hope that's possible. I had one lovely message. Because this is the other thing. It's not just meant to be a quick and easy book sort of thing. It's also meant to be a book that will be a gateway into fantasy for people who haven't read it before.
Uh-huh.
And I had this lovely email from someone who said that they read all three books, but then immediately passed them to their partner who didn't normally read fantasy. They normally read crime
Oh,
books,
yeah, I love
but
this.
then they read all three as well. And I'm
Neat.
like, yes, good. I want to get people who are reading crime and mystery, maybe even a bit of romance, to find enough of that in my books
Yeah,
to try a new genre because I think fantasy is just wonderful for creativity, for breaking down barriers and going in new directions. It's such a wonderful genre, and I'd love to see more people genre hop over to fantasy here, and just more people pick up books in general.
for sure.
Because I think there were a few people, like not to bag out one-star reviews. I don't think I've had a one-star review,
No,
but
you will, as you will. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and you don't take them personally. It's okay.
yeah.
But I think like some criticisms or like pushback was I think a lot of people were surprised that I didn't try to write a Malazan style book because I've
Huh,
reviewed a lot of Malazan on my channel or I've done a lot of Game of Thrones and bigger
huh,
series. They're like, oh, I'm surprised it's urban fantasy. I'm surprised it has romance and sex in it. I'm surprised it's a
uh-huh.
300-page book. And I'm like, well, that's okay. I will write a book like that one day,
Yeah,
but a short, easy to access book is important too, and that's a good part of the the market. We need books at all levels of intensity.
I
You know,
can't agree
we
more.
have your immortal investigations, and then you have your way of Idan. You know,
Yeah.
we have your simple, and then we have your complex, and that's exactly how it should work.
I could not agree more. We need all types of stories, and they all have a purpose. And I
Mm.
wouldn't call this simple, though. I actually would say that you
Thank
do
you.
weave in some really significant themes and thought in here. It's not just a simple popcorn read in my mind. It
Mm.
is entertaining and fun. It is actually very accessible. The prose is not difficult at all, but it's thoughtful, in ways that
Mm.
you can keep thinking about this book for a while after you put it down. So yeah. So, but with that, I want to thank you, my friend, for spending some time with me and talking about your debut. And you're already 3 books in, now working on the fourth. So
Mm.
yeah, everybody, once again, if you're here, there's going to be links in the description for Michael's channel. Brilliant reviewer, by the way. If you haven't heard me talk about Michael's
Thanks, Scott.
YouTube channel, that is also something. It's a treat to see how much effort and thought you put into your reviews and your videos. That's just tremendous. So it doesn't surprise me that there's some thought in here as well. So yeah, great stuff. But links to that, and then links to Michael's website where you can order the books. So yeah, all right.
Thanks a lot, Philip. And actually, you know what, Philip, I was just wondering, have you hit 50,000 subscribers today? Because
Uh,
you're right on that line, aren't you?
maybe by the time this video is out, I might have,
I
but no,
know, right?
at the time when we're recording this, it's probably
I was just looking, it's 49.9,
49.9, which means I don't
right
know.
there.
It's close. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Not
if
bad
I can
for
just,
an old English professor guy, right? Yeah.
not bad at all. Well, you know, mate, if I can just return the pitch, if you will. So congratulations on hitting 50,000 subscribers,
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you.
Or about to.
Yeah.
Definitely well deserved. You do fantastic work, taking complex works and making them accessible, and also taking entry level people and getting them deeper into the world. You do a lot of good work, and your work with One Piece is fantastic.
Oh, I have
You
so
know,
much fun with it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, getting manga readers and maybe even leading them into other books as well, or vice
Yeah.
versa. Excellent work. And also, While Darkness Gathers. Guys, if you didn't know, Philip Chase's book, it just appeared on my Kindle 24 hours ago because I pre-ordered it,
Oh,
and
thank you.
look, honestly, I considered staying up all night and reading it just to surprise you, but I haven't touched it yet, so sorry, but
Okay. Oh, no
but
worries. I
I'm.
wouldn't expect that. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, guys, Philip is also a fantastic author. He's done 3 big chunky books, and he's just released the fourth one, a little bit smaller, but still a sizable. Was it 330 pages?
On a
On
Kindle,
Kindle, it
yes.
is.
Yeah, yeah. On
Yeah,
the
yeah.
printed form, it's under 300, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah. But no, another fantastic author. So well done, Philip, and congratulations. And I'm very excited to see more people read your next book and jump on board the Adan train. If that metaphor died quick, but the intent was there.
Oh, I appreciate it so much, Michael. Yeah, and I really love what you had to say about the addendum. One of my favorite reviews of the series, actually.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I was worried that I might have been harsh, actually, but I'm glad you appreciate
No,
it
I mean, yeah, that's part of the deal. You want someone to be honest when they review your books too, right? So, because
because
we all
I
want to.
really yeah, because I absolutely really do love your books. But at the same time, like one of my things is I try to like get the right people to find the right books. I don't want to
Yes,
send everyone to read your book because not everyone will fit it.
right.
You know, so
That is so
you got to
true.
mention
Yeah.
tension areas. You want to get people
Yeah.
who are going to go read it and leave it 5-star reviews. You know,
Yeah.
that's the goal here. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you say to people, "Hey, this is the best cozy fantasy ever," or "Oh, you're gonna love this romantasy," and they read the
Yeah.
addendum, they're gonna be like, "What? 1 star?" Because I wanted a romantasy here. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
you want people to find the right reads for them. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Mm,
that is a
exactly.
good goal
Yeah.
to have. Yeah, as a reviewer, for sure. Yeah. So, well, thank you so
Mm.
much. And with
No, thank you
that.
for hosting me. I do appreciate this, mate. Thank you. And thanks for reading my book. Such an honor.
It was a pleasure. Really, it was. It really was. And I'm excited to continue in the Immortal Investigations, the series. So I like that you have the first book gives the series its title in a sense. This is the
Mm.
Immortal Investigation, but the series is Immortal Investigations, plural. So,
That's exactly right. A
yeah.
small distinction. You know what? I'll just share a fun fact quickly. The whole time I was writing this book and editing everything, it had a completely different title. See, the series was always going to be The Immortal Investigation, but book one was going to be called The Chaperone,
No
and
way.
very
I
much a
know why
reflection.
now, but
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it I even, made a reference to it, the fact that the title chaperone could refer equally to Jason or Peter, the hero or
Yeah.
villain. It was
Yeah.
a sneaky title like that.
Yeah.
But literally just in the few months before publication, I was like, you know what? It needs a snappier title. The chaperone is not a snappy title.
Yeah, I agree. I think
It's
you
not
did the right
quite.
thing. I think you did the
Thank
right
you.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I still kind of regret it. Sometimes I wish it was the Immortal Investigations, the Chaperone, but nah, it's just in my heart. That's where it will be.
I will just say that I think as a more broadly appealing title, this definitely wins. Whereas the
Exactly.
chaperone, it gets points for being clever, because you're right, it has, applicability to more than one character. But but as somebody who doesn't know the book, I'm just looking at the cover of the chaperone. What is that, a prom in there or something? Or yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So
You
yeah.
need a title that gives the right expectation. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and this does it. Yeah. And yeah, for sure. But thank you so much, Michael. And thank you everybody for watching. And
Thanks,
that's,
guys.
I guess that's it for us now, right? But until next time.